Welcome back to the Four Seasons, our recording studio for the live stream at Black Hat 2024. I am Jeff Mann, co-host of Paul Security Weekly, and with me for this segment is Brett Stone Gross. He's Senior Director of Threat Intelligence at Zscaler. Brett, welcome.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Keeping hydrated, keeping cool.
Yeah, it's a hot one out here.
It's insanely hot out here. I don't know why we do this. Tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into cybersecurity, and how'd you end up at Zscaler?
Yeah, so started off kind of in cybersecurity back in the 90s when AOL was a thing, back with the discs and,
You
CDs.
still have some of them in the packages? Because they're worth money.
Yeah, sell them on eBay. It's kind of a side business I have now.
Okay.
But, kind of getting into some trouble back then when I was, kind of a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And, kind of from there, went to, college and took some courses, and cybersecurity is one that really stood out. Ended up doing a PhD in computer science and
Doctor.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
And it's kind of been obviously a career since then.
Wow, doctor. I should refer to you as doctor from now on. How'd you end up at Zscaler?
So Zscaler, have some really good friends who work at Zscaler, and I've known them for quite a long time. We worked together at previous companies, and they had a perfect fit for kind of my areas of expertise, and started the threat intelligence with Zscaler.
Okay, so you're doing a lot of research. You get to tinker. You're leading people that do the tinkering these days.
Yeah, exactly. So doing both, leading as well as doing some tinkering as well, and we've been doing some really interesting things. We recently published a report on the largest ransomware payment in history. So lots and lots of really interesting things that we've been doing, and happy to share as much as we can.
Now, is that a separate report, or is that part of your annual ransomware report?
Yeah, that's part of the 2024 Threat Labs report.
Okay. So let's talk about that for a few minutes. Are there unique takeaways from the largest ransomware payout, or are there just lots of everybody does it this way, it just happened to be really big?
Yeah, so this is actually quite unique.
Okay.
And that's one of the things that we wanted to bring out in this report is this specific group that hit this company. It's a Fortune 50 company. Mm-hmm. They have quite a different MO from a lot of other ransomware groups. A lot of other ransomware groups, they cause a lot of disruption. Mm-hmm. They cause a lot of impact. They bring a lot of pressure on companies to pay by encrypting their files and taking their services offline. This particular ransomware group that got this $75 million payment behaves quite differently. And what they do is, instead of always encrypting files and causing disruption, they actually do everything they can to minimize any kind of business disruption. So in about half of their attacks, they don't actually even deploy file encryption. They don't deploy ransomware. They only steal data. And what they're doing is they're stealing massive amounts of data. And we're talking about an order of magnitude greater than what you see with these other ransomware groups. Mm-hmm. And they do this also all on their own, whereas a lot of these other ransomware groups, they outsource the attacks to affiliates. And these affiliates also cause a lot of problems. Like, there's usually rules of what they're supposed to be able to do and not do. Mm-hmm. They don't always follow those rules. It could be avoiding healthcare or avoiding critical infrastructure. Sometimes they still do those attacks.
Right.
Things like where you see like these oil companies being shut down, or there was a car dealer, a software maker for car dealerships that had a ransomware incident. And these had massive outages. Mm-hmm. This group, they don't want to cause those outages. They don't want to be in the news. And it's very smart. They've done a very good job of doing that. No, there's not a lot of information about this particular group, and it's because of how they operate.
Interesting. So is this the type of attack, I don't know if we have a clever name in the industry yet, but they're like threatening to release the data and reveal the secrets? Is it one of those types of attacks?
Yeah, exactly.
And
so
what are you guys calling that type of attack?
Yeah, so we call them encryption-less attacks, where they only steal data. They don't actually deploy file encryption. Okay. And what I think we're going to see is a shift, not necessarily away from the file encryption, but we're going to see a shift in the sense of the amount of data that's collected. Because most groups right now, they're stealing maybe a terabyte of data, which is still a lot of data. Mm-hmm. But this group is stealing tens of terabytes, or even we've seen 100 terabytes of data.
What's the next above tera?
Peta.
Peta, okay. You're a doctor, you should know that. Okay, so petabytes of data is what we're approaching.
Yeah.
Okay. what is besides issuing reports telling people danger, danger, what does Zscaler do to help organizations protect against these types of attacks?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that companies can do. We offer, of course, services to protect against ransomware attacks. There's many different things that you can do to protect yourself. Starting with basic IT hygiene, but also implementing.
That's going to be my next question.
Yeah.
What is there besides just doing basic
Yeah.
IT security hygiene?
So we offer solutions like a zero trust infrastructure. So something that moves past that traditional VPN model, where it's kind of a castle moat, and you assume that once somebody's on the network, they're trusted. That's usually all these cases. They don't have a zero trust infrastructure. There's a VPN. They connect to it. And from there, they're able to move laterally and compromise, all sorts of different systems, and then gain access to, the entire corporate network.
Gotcha. Going back to the report a minute, so obviously you're talking about more things besides this one particular incident, but what are some of the other highlights or lowlights, depending on your perspective of your report?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of interesting developments over the last year. In particular, there's been a lot of law enforcement activity. Previously, law enforcement has gone after kind of some of these ransomware groups themselves with mixed levels of success. In the last year, law enforcement has also been going after what we call initial access brokers. And these are the ones that are conducting the actual attacks, and then they gain access to a network, and then they usually deploy one of these ransomware families malware. So not only going after the ransomware groups themselves, but also those who are conducting the breaches as well. And there's been also kind of mixed levels of success. I think it's a good thing. Obviously, the more pressure that can be brought against those behind these attacks, because at the end of the day, this is a human problem. Your weakest link is the human, and also there's humans conducting these attacks. So we saw, and also our team participated in some of these law enforcement actions. And overall, I think it'll kind of increase the cost of doing business for these ransomware groups, which in the end is a good thing. A lot of them even operate like businesses. They have a business kind of organization that people have different teams and different responsibilities.
Well, you already implied that they outsource.
Yep, exactly. And the other thing too, we highlighted in the report is what do some of the groups do in terms of like when law enforcement pressure is brought on. A lot of times they'll rebrand under a different name because a lot of these are almost reputation based. So when you pay a ransom and you get the file decryption tool, if it works. If it doesn't work, they have a problem. They have a reputation problem. And there's also the reputational issue if they don't delete the data after you pay them to delete the data. So we've seen like groups rebrand. We've seen there's a group called Lockbit where the person behind it was indicted by the FBI and UK law enforcement. And so far that person keeps doing business as usual. But it's probably also another matter of time before they also decide to rebrand to kind of try to boost that reputation back to like their former glory. So
you talked about how you do investigation analysis of these various types of attacks and the groups that are doing it. Are you learning about the groups based on coding techniques, behaviors? Not to reveal your secret sauce, but what are the types of things that you guys are seeing that are characteristic? I guess?
Yeah, so my team has built a lot of automated tooling so that we can take malware samples at scale and process millions of samples and identify what they are and extract threat intelligence from those samples. So that can be anything from like indicators of compromise to encryption keys to campaign IDs, and that allows us to track over time and at scale all these different threat groups, what they're doing, how their tools work, and we do that through reverse engineering. So we are looking at a very low level of how these tools work or how this malware works. We also look at ransomware to see if there's any design flaws in the way they've implemented their cryptography. In a lot of cases, there are flaws that we can leverage or exploit to decrypt files for free as well.
Former cryptanalyst at NSA, not surprised that nobody does crypto right or do it well. This is all very fascinating to me. Are you also, it sounds like, well, you implied you go as far as to do, expert witness testimony, when the bad guys do get caught, that type of thing.
So we don't, I guess, testify in courts and stuff like that.
I haven't yet, I guess.
Yeah. So usually, like when we work with law enforcement, we provide technical our technical skills, so that could help them understand what the threats are, how to combat the threats. If there's weaknesses that potentially be leveraged, for example, to clean systems remotely, we have provided that technical expertise to them.
Gotcha. But you're more helping them, steer them in the right direction, perhaps, trying to find the bad guys.
Yeah.
Because I'm assuming you guys have sort of profiles on a lot of different groups, whether they've been positively identified or not. Which begs the question: who gets to declare an APT and number them?
So every company does it differently.
Okay.
Is the short answer.
All right.
And also the naming.
There is no
varies as
authoritative source for naming the bad guys?
It's kind of every company does it differently. Some companies choose their own conventions. Some are number based, some are animal based, or spider based. If you're CrowdStrike. And others use colors and things of that sort.
Interesting. So what's Zscaler's method or methodology for naming?
So generally, like we try to choose if it's already a known group, something that it's probably, we usually try to choose the most common name. We don't like to reinvent the wheel or try to create more confusion. So that's how we feel about it. In general, though, I would say I'm not a big fan of the numbering, because numbering is hard to remember. If you're got some 3 or 5 digit number, I'm probably not going to remember that.
Gotcha. So what does Zscaler do then? Just for our audience that might be not familiar with you, what do you do in terms of products and tools and things to help organizations?
Yeah, so a lot of the tooling that my team builds is directly integrated to our product. So anytime we come across these samples, so we can push them to our cloud. And that protects our customers across our entire cloud base. In addition to that, understanding how they operate and what techniques they use and what tooling they use, we can also build defenses and make sure that our customers are well protected.
So at the end of the day, you're a monitoring platform. Is it agent-based? Is it network-based? All of the above?
So it's an agent that you install on your endpoint,
Okay.
And from that it tunnels all your traffic through our cloud.
Gotcha.
And essentially what we've done is we've combined all these different former appliances into the cloud. You don't need any hardware anymore. You can do this all in the cloud now. So it's very cost efficient. It's much easier from a management perspective, and much more flexible than having a dozen or dozens of different boxes and all your data centers that you have to physically manage. And there's a lot of things too, in terms of monitoring. There's network monitoring from an IDS IPS perspective. There's a DLP to make sure you don't have intellectual property,
Right.
or customer data going out the door.
Right.
Especially with a lot of these attacks where tens of terabytes of data is being stolen. That's something that network monitoring is extremely important. And there's a lot of very large companies that we have seen are either don't have the right tools or don't have the right monitoring systems in place where an analyst can see something that says, this is something that's urgent and needs to be addressed.
Well, data theft was kind of the thing at the very beginning of all this, and even back then, nobody was watching stuff go out the door. They were watching, waiting for somebody to come in. There's an endless list of breaches, large and small, over the years. That was the problem. Nobody was watching the outbound.
Yep.
Great. Zscaler, I assume you've got a booth here. You're doing all the things that we have to do at Black Hat.
Yep.
Are you guys also over at DEF CON later this week, perchance?
I won't be, but I think some will.
Okay. Because that's where all the fun is. Well, great. I appreciate your time today. That's about all the time we have for this session. For our listening audience, if you want to find out more information about Zscaler and get a copy of the report, go to securityweekly.com/ZscalerBH. That's Black Hat. That's going to wrap for us this session. Thanks a lot, Brett.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Thanks a lot, Doctor.
Thank you.